we bought we had a good buy on a 39-foot O'Day in San Diego, sailed it down the Pacific, and then up the Sea of Cortez to San Carlos, Mexico. And we said, gosh, we circumnavigated the Baja Peninsula. Why can't we sail around the world? And believe it or not, that was sort of the tipping point. And initially we thought, well, we can cruise Mexico, we can cruise the Caribbean. But I said, gosh, really, it's just all a matter of scale, right? And I was in the military, and I thought, I was, that I could do anything bulletproof. And well, that's because I had, the force and might and power of, the most powerful military in the world behind me, whatever I did while I was an Army officer. But anyway, so I had a lot of reality therapy to come, but at the time it seemed like a good idea.
This is the We Get Outdoors podcast, and today I've got a question for you. What do you get if you combine a ex-military intelligence officer, somebody who holds a Coast Guard captain's license, is an author, a private pilot, and decided to buy a sailboat? Well, I didn't know up until the other week when I got told I was going to meet today's guest. And today's guest is a lady called Julie Bradley. If you haven't read her books yet, you should do. But Julie, welcome to the We Get Outdoors podcast.
Thanks, Rob. Happy to be here.
It's super cool to have you here. I half wondered when I was preparing for our conversation whether you'd be bobbing about on the ocean or whether you'd be in a house. And actually, I think we find you in Arizona today.
Yes. Our base is a log cabin in the high country of Arizona, about 7,000 feet in the Ponderosa Pines.
Oh, beautiful. Now, my first thing that I'd like to ask you is how did the tipping point come about for you where you finally took the idea and maybe the dream or the goal of sailing around the world and said, now's the time? Talk me through that.
Well, I first thought about sailing around the world after I was in the Army for 10 years. And at that point, you need to commit. At the 10-year point in the military, you either have to get out and do something else or say, I'm going to stay in and retire. And I came from a very, almost near poverty background when I was growing up. And it just seemed so appealing to me to have a pension after 20 years. And so I said, I'm going to stay in the military. I'm going to do the best that I can, get as much rank and experience as possible, and then retire at 40 and do something totally different than that. Because I don't think I think that retiring at 40, I knew that there were a lot of skills the military had given me that I could parlay into a defense contractor job, but I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something totally different. And my husband and I love to sail. And even though he had gotten out of the Army and I had a lot of deployments, we had a lot of separations, but sailing together always brought us back. It was very, very bonding and kind of helped us work through problems that any marriage that has a lot of separation is going to experience. And so one time, we agreed to help a friend deliver a boat from San Diego down the Pacific, up the Sea of Cortez, or to Puerto Vallarta. And so we said, sure, that's fantastic. And everything, basically Glenn, my husband and I were like in charge of the boat. This guy was, very, very tentative and wasn't really sure. And so we felt like, gosh, well, we could do that. That's good. And then later on, we bought we had a good buy on a 39-foot O'Day in San Diego, sailed it down the Pacific, and then up the Sea of Cortez to San Carlos, Mexico. And we said, gosh, we circumnavigated the Baja Peninsula. Why can't we sail around the world? And believe it or not, that was sort of the tipping point. And initially we thought, well, we can cruise Mexico, we can cruise the Caribbean. But I said, gosh, really, it's just all a matter of scale, right? And I was in the military, and I thought, I was, that I could do anything bulletproof. And Well, that's because I had, the force and might and power of, the most powerful military in the world behind me, whatever I did while I was an Army officer. But anyway, so I had a lot of reality therapy to come, but at the time it seemed like a good idea.
But also the Sea of Cortez, I've sea kayaked quite extensively in the Sea of Cortez. And I can just imagine if you're sailing in it that you could easily convince yourself that the rest of the world is this beautiful, and let's go see the rest of the world. I've been there with the whales and the dolphins and whatever else, and I can only imagine it's a place to dream, isn't it?
Oh, it's a fantastic body of water. In fact, we have a place down in San Carlos, Mexico. That's our other place. It's pretty close to here, and you just couldn't have a more different and refreshing cultural immersion between San Carlos, Mexico, and northern Arizona. So it's a nice balance for us, and I'm really glad that you got to appreciate it. And maybe you'll want to come do a podcast from one of the lagoons where the whales calve during January, February.
I have this secret thing. I had this idea before COVID that I was going to go and take 3 months and do a North American road trip and go and re-meet everybody I've interviewed and go and just drive around and interview, not on Zoom, but like let's talk with a margarita on a boat in the Sea of Cortez. Like that would be a thing to do, right? Not on Zoom, where if you've got a margarita in your hand now, you should be going to meetings and because it's your morning time, So maybe we can make it happen. That's definitely in my future.
Well, it's definitely one of the best experiences of my life, and burned into my memory the mother actually pushing the baby whales into the panga so that you could pet them. And I wanted to chide the mothers, like, don't train them to be so friendly. It's not always going to be in their best interest. But it was so incredible, Rob. I hope that you can find time for that and do a broadcast from the Baja.
Oh, I do love the Baja Peninsula. I remember having breakfast one morning on an island about 12 kilometers away from Loreto, which is in the Sea of Cortez there, and watching orca whales coming in, and they were scraping their tummy on the bottom of the seabed and then coming up and cresting and then going back down, and they played there doing that for about 45 minutes. It was it was almost like our TV show at breakfast time. And that was about 8 or 9 years ago, and it still sticks in my head today as this incredible memory. It's such a beautiful place.
Oh, I love it. I love whales. I love dolphins. That's what I'm just so happy that I'm able to keep marine life and the wildlife of the mountains in my life. Every year I get to experience both, and I just feel so lucky.
It's amazing. Now, tell me, you mentioned you had some some therapy or some lessons to learn leaving the military. How was that transition from a military adventure to a sailing adventure? What were the highs and the lows of that?
Well, the highs were many, in that I felt like I think so much of it is what's between your ears. And I think I learned in the Army to know that if you think you can do something, then you can. And that, I would be a woman in an infantry division with 12,500 soldiers, and I would see other people doing things. I was like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And that sort of became my theme. If somebody else with my comparable background or even not can do it, well, then I can too. I might have to work really hard. I might have to really apply myself. But that was my mindset. And I had no idea all the skills, even though I had done lots of research. Basically my theme has always been pick a goal that is so big that it inspires you to work towards it. and then do all the research that you can to get there. Read everything you can, talk to everybody, get as much experience as possible. And then the most important thing is never give up.
Mm.
So I had the first one covered. Okay, like I dreamt really super big about something that captured my imagination, got me through deployments. It was the carrot in really hard times when I was deployed to remote areas and over my head, professionally and emotionally and mentally. But it was always something that I could kind of switch to the screensaver vision of us sailing around the world or being on a tropical island with palm trees. And then whenever I deployed, my duffel bag would be just chock full of sailing books, cruising world magazines, you name a sailing book. I suspect I've read it. And anyway, and then, never giving up. Well, certainly that was part of my deal, stamina. But the other thing is that when you sell all your possessions and use your your little, life nest egg of savings to buy a boat, you really have thrown your hat over the fence in a very big way there. So I think that I don't want to give myself too much credit. The fact that we had just bought this brand new boat in France, and it's not that we were wealthy or anything. I mean, we were basically fixed income, military government retirees. We're not talking great wealth here. But what I discovered is if you sell your house, your cars, everything, and have all your savings from the last 20 something years, then, and you're willing to say that this is important enough to chunk all that into, and knowing that I had my husband and I both had our monthly pensions really helped make that decision, because, we weren't going to have to stop and, get jobs along the way. As long as we live frugally on a sailboat, you can drop anchor. I think that sailors are pretty well known for being pretty tight with their money. And so it's almost like if somebody sees you walking down the street in their Tilly hat, with your sailor garb, nobody really expects you to be spending a lot of money when you walk in their store.
Yeah, you almost have to put yourself in a place where the only choice you've got left to yourself is to actually execute on the goal you've chosen. And where turning around and going backwards is more painful than going forwards. And then you can just kind of step over that line, can't you? And say, like, this is what I'm doing. So you mentioned you bought a boat in France. What was the boat? Because the French are renowned for producing sailing boats. Some of them are great quality, and some of them are not so great quality, in my opinion. So, what was your choice and why?
Well, I loved our boat so much. It was a Super Maramoo and a Mel. And it's fantastic. Has all these watertight bulkheads, has all these features. What I love about it was that it has simple solutions for big problems. It's like, how do you know without some kind of digital sensor how much water you have left in your water tank? Which, by the way, they spread the water out really low along the hull to keep the center of gravity low and have a gigantic fresh water tank. Well, you have a floating cork that like a ruler, like a floating cork that you can read and know right away. There's nothing to go wrong. That's what I loved about it. Was simple and elegant solutions to things that usually boat builders don't even try to tackle.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think all too many boat builders think the solution to the problem is add more technology. And which I suppose if you're sailing around the Mediterranean or you're around the European or a coastline somewhere, that's fine. I've done expeditions all over the world, and I generally find that technology breaks at the time you least want it to, and the place where you're least able to fix it or replace it, and at the place where you most need it. So what else was it about your Super Maramoo that drew you to it? I mean, was it the ketch mast configuration or the cockpit, or what else?
Well, the catch, I love catches because you can really balance the sails in a storm. Fantastic. And they have this very unique downwind sailing rig called the Papillon. And it goes beyond wing on wing. And it's so easy it's designed for a couple to operate. And it's so easy to deploy and retract. Like when I was on night, I love night watch. And if the wind started piping up or I felt uncomfortable, I could furl both of those Papillon sails. And then if the wind shifted and we couldn't use them, if it shifted, I mean, it was even good on a bit of a broad reach, but of course best on following. And I could do all this by myself without waking Glenn up, and that's no small thing.
That's incredible. Am I right in thinking papillon is French for butterfly? Do you know that?
Exactly. And it looks like a gigantic, beautiful butterfly.
Okay.
Just amazing.
I did French at school, and that was a long time ago, but it just kind of popped back into my head. Okay, so it's like the wings of a butterfly, that same sort of look and feel.
Exactly. Oh, by the way, I think that some of your listeners may know the more recent Amels. I think that they're making a sloop now, but the one that I'm referring to is the catch rig, the Super Maramoo, and we're still quite close to the factory people. There are still some people that were there. We were on the very leading edge of Americans or people outside of Europe buying Amels. We just got really lucky and saw one in the Chesapeake Bay when we were stationed in Washington, D.C., and went aboard, and the amazing, simple, and elegant features stuck in my mind so much. And that was what I had in my mind for how much money we needed to save. And luckily, when it was time to retire, the US dollar was really strong, and we got an incredible discount on that boat, just because of the exchange rate. But it was nerve-wracking. I mean, like when you take your whole nest egg of money and you're watching, oh my God, obsessively watching the exchange rate, like you don't want to be that person who jumps the gun and does it before it actually, it's like, anyway, it wasn't like at its perfect exchange rate, but it was still darn good.
That's it. A few years ago, I moved some money from the UK to South Africa, where I am now, and it was about 12 South African rand to the pound. And later that day, our previous president, who's now in jail because he's that corrupt, he sacked the finance minister, and then it went from, I think it then went to 22 rand to the pound. So if I'd have waited an extra 12 hours, I almost would have made that like doubled my money almost in bringing it into South Africa. But hey, you were on the right side of that equation. So then you chose to leave the military, or maybe your time was up. I'm not too sure. How did you find that transition from military life into civilian life? Like nobody's telling you what to do anymore, and there's no orders, and there's no sir or ma'am or anything else. There's no uniform. I don't know. I've had times in my life where I've had transitions like that, and it's amazingly refreshing for a short period of time, and then I felt a bit lost. I mean, was that what you experienced, or how was it for you?
Well, Rob, it wasn't not an easy transition. I mean, first of all, I had enlisted in the Army after high school, so it kind of raised me. You know what I mean? And then, so I was only 40 years old. I could have retired right at 20, but I stayed a little while longer for my husband to be able to retire too. And I had a horrible panic attack, the first one ever, the day after we sold our place, and the day that the person picked up who had bought our last car, and I had boxed up all my uniforms, all my boots, everything. I had continual Craigslist sales on everything. Our bikes were gone. And I just had this horrible panic attack. And by the way, I really thought that was a heart attack. I had no idea that a panic attack could be so debilitating. And because at the time on the movies, when somebody had a panic attack, they were just kind of hyperventilating. I think that, and I was so convinced that, oh my God, here I've worked so hard for my pension and I'm not going to get it. That was what came into my mind. So yeah, it was a really, really difficult transition because you're rewarded every day. Every day you're judged in the army for the job you do that day or that mission or their project. It's very intense. You never equate what you're doing in the military with your salary. It's sort of like who you are. And it's a very tight-knit community. And suddenly for my husband and I, who we had not even really lived together that much, now we're living together on a sailboat and sailing around the world together. And and I don't know, it was sort of like overwhelming, just really overwhelming. And we hadn't even picked up the boat yet, and that's what happened. So anyway, it was a big transition. But I have to say that all the couples, all the sailing couples, all the cruising couples that I know that have made it beyond the first few months, not everybody does. They're so tight, they're so bonded. I think what it does is it teaches you such, we take each other for granted. We take everybody for granted all the time, unless you really have the time to start respecting, like, that you don't have everything. I was like, I don't know how to fix the things that my husband can fix. And maybe he doesn't have the same problem solving or creativity or ability to meet people on shore, or, I don't know. We everybody brings it. It turns people who are individual accomplisher kind of people. And I don't want to say leaders, because I don't really think I was a very good leader, into a team player. It's like you have to respect the people on your crew, be it just one other person or another couple. We've had other people on board when we make passages, or just come to visit from the States, or from as we make friends around the world. But you just have to realize, you have to become a team player. You have to respect what's going on around you and the people that are helping you, that you're living with all the time.
Because you are living in a petri dish. It's like a human science experiment on a boat in some respects. There's not a lot of hiding from each other, and
no, exactly.
You can't.
And you can't afford to be mad. You can't afford to be mad at each other. I mean, I'm a person who kind of recovers pretty fast from some little disagreement. But my husband is a person who, he's an engineer, really super technical, but he's also very sensitive, which you wouldn't really know, if you worked with him. And he actually likes to be mad for a while, and that he couldn't afford to do that, because we would need a sail change. He would and then once you're working together, once you're accomplishing something, whatever was behind you is behind you. And now you're in the here and now. And so it was great, actually, for that. And of course, those are skills that you take with you after you sail around the world, or cross an ocean, or even charter a boat. It's like, there's that kind of like, forming, storming, norming, that old, thing, that old managerial thing, when people come together, there's a little bit of friction, and then you normalize and become productive. And, and initially we thought we would just stay out there for 3 years. We thought, well, we'll do a 3-year circumnavigation, but we got to the Pacific, the South Pacific, and said, we can't leave here. I'm sorry, we're staying. So we stayed there for 4 years, which, turned it into very close to 8 years.
Wow. Do you think that, it's interesting you mentioned Tuckman's theory, the forming, norming, storming, or forming, storming, norming, performing. Do you think that shared common purpose, that regardless of what happens, we're here to sail, and we're here to sail around the world together, that must add huge amounts of power to a relationship when you can remember that is actually what we're here to do. And the thing that we're experiencing now is just now, and it will go in 10 seconds, and then but then the next 10 seconds we're back to our purpose again. Does that help, or is that part of the mental process?
When you say purpose, I just want to say that I really never felt that purpose. You know what I mean? I never felt like on the Great Loop I did. I felt like we've got to get this finished in 1 year, but because that's it's driven by the seasons and blah, blah, blah. But sailing around the world, I didn't feel that purpose at all. I felt like like a beginner's mind, like every time we landed someplace new. I know this is going to sound really crazy, but I always thought every time we landed somewhere, I always thought, I wonder if I could live here.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't that I wanted to stop, but I thought, we really can live anywhere. We have our little modest monthly or pensions for the rest of our life. And maybe we could live wherever we wanted. I at the time I'd only really lived in army bases. It's like I might not have had a really good understanding of what there was in America. But every time we landed somewhere, of course, certainly not, there were some developing countries that never entered my mind.
Mm.
But there were a heck of a lot of really awesome places that I was like, wow, this is pretty amazing. And so I never woke up. It's like, how many sea miles do we need to do today? Because, we would linger. I mean, we'd stay in Fiji for 6 months,
Awesome.
I mean, yeah. So it wasn't like that. It wasn't so goal oriented. I mean, the goal, like before a passage, was to make sure that I provisioned well enough that, that we would eat well for 21 days, that our reverse osmosis water maker was, still putting out, good water. There wasn't too much salt content left, that there weren't any, the sails were in good enough condition. And these are not, I mean, like, I just actually stepped into a blue task when I talked about the sails, being in, because Glenn would do those, he's the one who would go to the top of the mast and do all, he's the one who took care of all the mechanical stuff. So, um, I have to just, spiritually apologize to him. He's not here today. He actually went to pick up a little sailboat for us to take down to San Carlos.
Cool.
So we're excited about that. Yeah, just to have something little to buzz around in the bay. And we might anyway, blah 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 blah, but I don't want to go there. But anyway, yeah, he took care of all the blue things and I took care of all the pink things, which, I can say, having been in a man's job for for much of my adult life, that I had to embrace the pink things when we went sailing, because if two people try to do what the other person is doing, it will, number one, really annoy the other person. And number two, there'll be things that don't get done. So
Mm.
that pink and blue division must exist on every boat. Even if there's no woman aboard, somebody's got to be doing the cooking, the provisioning, some of the more traditionally, although I know a lot of women out there take the captain's job. And I know I was been really surprised how many women I'm a Facebook member of women who sail. And some of these women, just like, I'm just bow to them and their ability to do mechanical things. And, I watched, I see these women on the, Globe Vendée, this,
Mm.
British woman, doing all these major repairs in the middle of the Southern Ocean. I just like, oh my God, I want to, my next life, I want to come back as these women. But this time I'm just dealing with the hand I've been dealt.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter what the tradition says. There is a big list of jobs and responsibilities that need to get dealt with, and people need to be responsible or accountable for them. And you've got to share the list, haven't you? And some things will be cooking, and other things will be sales. And yeah, you just got to get on with it. So did you choose to start your adventure from France, in the Bay of Biscay, from the Amel factory, or did you start in the US? What was the starting point?
Well, the French have a lot of pride, and they have a lot of pride in their quality products. And so Amel does not deliver their boats, and they don't, if you buy an Amel, you have to go pick it up. In other words, you need to be a good sailor. Like, these are blue water boats. Don't bite the dust on one of our boats. We don't want that bad press, right? So, we had to fly over to France, and by the way, because of when we retired and we'd already sold everything, we said, we're just going to go pick it up and we'll find a good weather. Even though it is December, we will find a good weather window. And we could have left it at, Amel has a marina. They said, you'll probably want to leave the boat here after we check you out. They have like a 4 or 5 day train up where they take you through all the systems. And anyway, and so we said, yeah, we might do that. We might do that. And then we could just travel around Europe in a car or something. But it was so freaking expensive. Oh my God. And we had just retired and we just sunk all of our money and we didn't even really figure how much it would cost to get a life draft. And by the way, those boats don't come equipped with any electronics. We had to, and they said you don't even need a single sideband radio. Your VHF and your cell phone will be enough. It's like, well, I don't think so. I'm just saying that there were a lot of things that we had to spring for financially, equipping a boat, a offshore boat. And the price of the marinas were high then. And after we came back around the world, they were like unbelievably high. And we just couldn't even really, we couldn't get our frugal selves. Two people who'd been scrimping and saving, early fire people, right? Before it was really a thing, to pay those prices for the marina. So we said, no, we'll find a weather window and we'll just scoot. Like, that sounds pretty innocent, right? We'll just scoot south. We'll get down to the Canary Islands where it's, a lot better weather. And well, I'm sure if you've read Escape from the Ordinary, you know what terrible judgment we used and what a horrible, horrible, horrible storm we got caught in. And and I believe that with a lesser boat, it would have broken up. We were falling off gigantic waves. I mean, every time it did that, I felt like the boat was going, I was like, oh my God, please. And I suddenly had this epiphany of everything that I'd been reading all these years about blue water sailing. And I'd read about people being lost at sea. And I'm thinking, and I never really delved into that concept, right? Not when I was reading Sailing or Cruising World magazine, but what that really means, Rob, and I didn't even know until I was out there, was their boat broke up in the waves that crashed down and the hull could not withstand the forces of, it was like hitting concrete and it shattered. And there's no way in that kind of situation you would ever get on your life raft. I mean, it was terrifying. And I even today, when I think about people getting off their perfectly good boat into a life raft, I just can't even imagine. As long as you've got that boat, it's a little cork out there bobbing around. Stay on your boat, like in Apocalypse Now. Don't get off the boat.
Yeah, and the Bay of Biscay that time of year is renowned for weird weather, weird seas, unpredictable, big seas, big weather. I mean, it's certainly not a place for the faint-hearted. So, maybe it was maybe it was bad judgment, but you learn something every time, don't you? So now you know that you have to strip a degree of emotion out of decision making, and maybe did you have a moment? I've had these where you think you've got everything dialed and you think you know everything, and then suddenly you're in that moment where you're crashing down waves and you're like, I really should have gone and executed on the stuff in the books to a higher level.
I don't know, Rob. I don't even think, I think that I was kind of in shock. I was just not, we were kind of numb. We were just exhausted. We were so exhausted. And Glenn's a better sailor than I am. And he was really, really exhausted. And he's always so positive and so confident and self-assured. And I remember asking him, are we going to make it? And I wish I hadn't asked, because he said, I'm not sure. And, I wasn't sure either. And I don't know. We learned so very much from that. But I believe that there were unseen forces that helped us out there, because I just, it was so hard. It was so stupid. It was beyond bad judgment. It was just totally stupid. And I don't know. I feel like we're so lucky to have made it through. And I just thinking about it, I get kind of even choked up, because it was really horrible.
Yeah. And that would put other people off the rest of the adventure that they had planned for themselves. They'd if they got as far as Portugal, for instance, they'd be like, right, we're done, sell the boats. We know this sailing thing around the world isn't for us. So
I guess that was the advantage of not having, basically we didn't have any other money. We didn't have money. I mean, really and truly though, I got to say, maybe it shows, that I guess one thing military, I was definitely resilient. I was like, well, I'm never going to do that again. Right. I mean, and from then on, we only crossed oceans at the right latitude at the right time of the year. And boy, what a difference that made, right? And they call it the milk route for good reason, because if you do it right, if you read the freaking directions and the cruising guides, it's okay. You'll be fine.
Yep, that's it. That's it. That's it. So I have to be honest. I've only flicked through Escape from the Ordinary. So did you then choose to you got to the Canaries? But I mean, did you choose to cross the Atlantic that year? Spend time in the Mediterranean? What was the thing that you got up to?
No, well, it was wintertime. It was wintertime. So we wanted to get over to the Caribbean, and because we'd kind of been slapped down by Mother Nature. There we are, the Canary Islands, and we had a lot of repairs to make. I mean, the boat did not come through unscathed. In fact, when we called the factory, they were freaked out that we had left. We left over Christmas when the factory was on holiday. And they were so freaked out. They were so happy we'd made it, because it was actually a very famous storm called the Christmas storm. And this one gigantic freighter that had previously been expanded by being cut in two and re-welded back together with more space, broke in half. And you can read about this in my book. It was the containers. We're on the VHF radio listening to this Spanish or Portuguese Air Force shooting these containers because there were hazards in navigation. These gigantic towboats towed one half that boat to the Canaries and the other half to the Azores. I mean, it was a major, it wasn't just like, big waves, wah, wah, wah. It was like a freaking big Force 10 storm. Wow. And and so we had a lot of things come off of our boat during that storm. Like, as long as the hull's there, I wasn't, we could, as long as we continue to sail, we're fine. But major things came off of the boat. And they sent down a repair person from La Rochelle, France, down to the Canary Islands to fix the boat. And I think that, they're a fantastic company. Every single thing imaginable that goes wrong with it, they will fix, guarantee for the first year. They could never have imagined that we would do anything so stupid. And I'm sure that's why I think they still remember us. They actually do remember us, because I do talk a lot about the boat in both my books. And I think they've gotten a lot of, I'm so grateful how well the books have done. And, they even for a while had it on their website for a little while. And and also we let them use our boat for the Annapolis Boat Show one year, because there were not that many MLs in the United States, and ours. And anyway, we really owed them. We have a good relationship with the ML factory still.
Yeah, they can't believe that the guarantee had to be used, or the warranty had to be used that heavily.
Yeah, 2 weeks, 2 weeks after but they flew the guy down. It was like almost incredible. And then, they were able to acquire some of the parts there, and some they had to ship. I mean, pretty nice, pretty good customer service, I've got to say.
That's incredible. Now, I want to skip forward a bit, because you mentioned a little while ago that you didn't say you got stuck in the South Pacific, but you did say you were there for 4 years. So obviously you've sailed the Caribbean, you've been through the Panama Canal, you've gone across the bulk of the Pacific. When you got to the South Pacific, what was it that grabbed you and said, you're not going to go just yet? However long you thought you were going to be here for, it's going to be a lot longer.
Well, Rob, the South Pacific is a very sticky place. If actually, I think some of the best accounts of what happened, our experiences in the South Pacific are in the second book, Crossing Pirate Waters. But some of the things that happened to us, some of it was so, I don't know, the synchronicity. was so, I am not a religious person, as in like religion or anything like that, but some of the things that happened there were so incredible. Let me just give you one. I'll try to encapsulate this. It's a much better story in the book. But so when I was working, when I retired from the Army, I had worked as a nuclear weapons inspector in Russia for 3 years.
Wow.
And so I would deploy for 9 weeks and then come back for three, training my team, writing my reports. But during those 3 weeks, I had a lot more flex with my time, because they knew that I was, trying to take care of things personally and writing my report, all this other stuff. So I didn't have like a really strict schedule. So I would try to go. Glenn was working the other day, so I would go to the Smithsonian, and I love to watch their old archive films. And there's one I saw called Land Diving in New Hebrides. And I said, what's that? So I watched it, and it was like from the 30s, 1930s, some super affluent American yachtsman with his ascot and his big, gigantic, long wooden boat with his deckhands, with his old celluloid film, had landed in a island group called the New Hebrides, and just happened upon these people building this 100-foot tall tower, where, for reasons unknown to this day, they would tie liana vines to their ankles and jump off. And it was just great. And the reason why he was even doing this around the world thing, because he was dropping off not sheep, dropping off pigs and chickens and ducks and geese for the islanders, thinking, well, I'll really improve. It's sort of like an early philanthropy kind of thing. And they would, they'd show the little pigs running away. I'm thinking, oh my God, those pigs, the descendants of those pigs are still there, But anyway, so I pretty much, but I remember telling Glenn, it's like, gosh, we totally need to sail around the world, because there's some place called New Hebrides that we got to go to. Anyway, so here, so we are like in year 4 of our circumnavigation, basing out of New Zealand for half the year during the tropical cyclone, going back and forth. So we just left New Zealand. By the way, you've got to read the books, because while we were in New Zealand, we were on the America's Cup race committee. And the way that happened was like so freaking amazing synchronicity for two cruising sailors who really never raced much in their life. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So let me go back to, so when we leave New Zealand to go to that, we were doing kind of one island group at a time. One year it was Fiji. This year it's going to be Vanuatu, but we can't stay long because we've got to go back for the America's Cup, blah, blah, blah. So we get there, we get to Port Vila. We just sailed 7 or 8 days from Auckland, our Bay of Islands, and Opua. And we land there at the capital, and the guy says, are you here for the land diving? And we said, what? And then he explains that there was this land diving taking place in Pentecost Island, which is like way far north. Tomorrow is the only time to see it. And, we figured that you would go up there. It's like, and then it was almost like all the synapses in my brain are firing like crazy. Like, oh my God, that is that thing, that film I saw at the Smithsonian 6 years ago. That is it. And we're here. And so it was, I said, well, what about the next time they do it? It's like, well, that'll be next year. I was like, So Glenn and I look at each other, and he didn't still quite get what I was talking about. Like I'd seen the film. I said, this is that film, New Hebrides. And, well, this used to be called New Hebrides. Now it's called, Vanuatu. And so we sailed over, we ran back, we took the dinghy back to the boat. We looked at the chart. We can freaking do it. We can't reprovision. We won't have any more onions or cabbage or fruits or vegetables, but we can get up to see this land diving. So we sailed overnight. And and so we dropped anchor. We didn't even know which village. That's more than one village on Pentecost Island, but we picked somehow the right village. And that, we're still up, and we're like, I hope this is it. We're looking, scanning binoculars, and these people with their their penis sheaths basically come out, and this guy comes over, and it turns out he's the chief, like we're here to, and they speak Bislama, which is sort of like pidgin English, and oh my god, and then we proceed to be like his guests for the ceremony. Oh my god, it's so incredible. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know. The universe just smiled on us. I don't know why. It was always the best things were happening, and it wasn't just us. Other cruisers had the same. Maybe there's just so many wonderful things happening out in the world that no matter when you arrive, something awesome is going to be there for you. But I know that the things that were there for us, I truly appreciate, and I wrote about.
So for people who haven't seen this jumping off the tower they make, it's I've seen a video of people doing it, and the thing that came to my mind is like crazy old school bungee jumping, but without a bungee rope, just with vines.
Exactly. And there was a very long day. I mean, you can actually see, we have video clips on my website. It's juliebradleyauthor.com. And it's pretty amazing. Even to this day, I can't even quite understand how people do get hurt. There was one young man there I write about in my book who his vine snapped, and they had some really interesting way of getting him conscious. He was sort of unconscious for a little while, but very crude technique, but it worked. And we don't know what his internal injuries were, but he did very shakily walk away from the tower area where, all the singing and dancing and jumping was going on. But it's a very long day. It was like maybe six hours out in the hot sun, but so worth it. But you're kind of emotionally wrung out at the end, because it's like you can't take your eyes away, but you're afraid that any minute you're going to see something horrible. It's kind of interesting.
Was it in German they have the phrase Schadenfreude or something like that, which is
exactly, that's it. You got it. You nailed it.
There's something around that you shouldn't really be interested in this and what's going to happen, but actually you can't help yourself but pay attention. Do you think that with the South Pacific, and I've never been, but I've spent a lot of time in Nepal, Pakistan, India, places like that, that there's an appeal to places which are almost like, I don't know, time hasn't changed for the past 100 years very much, or time's gone by. You think there's a part of the human spirit that actually is just done with fast-paced technology and actually wants to go back 100 years and chill out a bit or something, or be more rustic and practical? I don't know.
I think that you've really hit it there. All of us, we the more primitive a country and a culture was, the more intriguing it is to people. And it's just hard to have the same level. Like, I like to wake up. I like to go someplace where when I wake up in the morning, I know I'm not in America. Do you know what I mean? It's like, between globalization and McDonald's in almost, every country, you want to go someplace where, and of course the word authentic is so overused, but I don't have another word for it. I mean, do you know one where you can, you get under the skin of a place? It's not people selling, like if a cruise ship goes there, I don't want to go there. Do you know?
It's authentic. I think real. I think a lot of us get very fed up with fake. I don't think we realize just how fake actually a lot of the world around us actually is. It's all, Instagram, somebody putting out their pretense about how great their world is while they take antidepressants twice a day just to stay sane. And I think we all know that there's a lot of truth in that. But we don't talk about it very often, and we kind of just accept it as usual. Certainly for me, it's authentic, but I don't know, real is the word I could come up with. Like there's real risk, there's real rewards, there's real happiness, real enjoyment. There's everything is real. There's no, maybe less in the way of comfort blankets around us or something. I don't know. it makes for me coming back to the first world. I find it very challenging when I do go back to the first world, because it just doesn't feel. I don't know. Whoa, this is a rabbit hole we can go down, Julie. This is like,
it's true, Rob. You're right, because like while you've been talking, you've been making me think of all these other things. It's like, it's almost like, but yeah, when we go there, we want to if somebody knows how to read English, we give them books, to teach them things. It's like it's sort of like we're torn between wanting to be immersed in this simple, primitive culture, because and then feeling guilty because, you have so much and they don't, and wanting to raise their standard of living. But then what you're going to end up doing is making them just like the rest of the world. It's like this big conflict, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge conflict. And it's weird. I think I'm almost as lost for words for it as you are, actually, in some respects. But one of the things that, so I obviously live in South Africa at the moment, and there's abject poverty all around me, people are genuinely within just a couple of miles of where I am now, genuinely living in mud huts. Genuinely don't know what they're eating tomorrow, genuinely don't have clean water, genuinely don't have toilets, so on and so forth. And I can help those people by giving them a job, training them in their job, helping them become better at their job, almost a bit like the military, really. You work your way up and onwards. I actually can make a positive difference in their world so they can have a better quality of life. What I find very hard is when I talk to friends from the UK or family from the UK, and they're talking about their problems as though they are comparable to the person who lives in a mud hut and doesn't know what they're going to eat tomorrow. And I have to watch what I say. And I'm actually watching it now, because part of me just wants to scream at them and say, you don't know how fortunate you are. And you're miserable and talking about your worries. But actually, Tabo, just down the road, who does live in a mud hut, who doesn't have a toilet, who doesn't have running water, who doesn't know what he's going to eat tomorrow, he's a cheerful guy and will sit by the side of you and share his sweet corn with you if he's got one at lunchtime, and he's happy. And I don't know, in the South Pacific, did you just find the people almost happier than anywhere else you've ever found?
Oh, the Fijians, their DNA makes them happy. They are just incredibly, people who don't even have anything want to share what they do have. It's just so incredible. I don't know. We love Fiji. Fiji is, we're not so unique. Fiji is everybody's favorite, all the cruisers' favorite of the South Pacific island. And, but we found, every island group has remote, untouched areas. Even, New Caledonia or, Vanuatu, it's really, really easy to find. Other than Port Vila, you're pretty much primitive. But just please don't tell me cruise ships are now going to Pentecost Island. That would make me so sad. But in any case, there's lots and lots of, the Gambiers, there's lots and lots of islands in the South Pacific that, it's going to take, maybe a couple generations to get to the point where, there's really nothing left of original culture. And, and you can see it today when you go to some of these island groups. As good-hearted as the religions, some of these religious organizations are, they're homogenizing, these cultures where people think that their songs are, Bible songs, that they think that is their heritage. And, it's interesting to see all this happen, in our time. And, maybe the next two generations, will there be anything left? I don't know. I hope so. That's why I wrote my books. I wanted there to be, I wanted to capture this.
When did you decide to start writing? Was that a plan from day one, or did you just fall into it by accident?
I just fell into it. I just wanted to to send email updates to family and friends. And then I started writing for a couple newspapers. And now when I look at my original writing, I'm just so, oh my God, I was so bad. But people still, the people are just so forgiving. I just love it. I just love it. And it brought me closer to people too, because I would get these emails. People would like forward it to their friends, and then new people will please add me to your email list. And now the best thing that I totally love is that all these people who read my book write me. And we actually visited a lot of those people, not a lot of them, but everybody who said visit us, I would contact them when we got there. I said, okay, be careful, because I really will. And we've had one reader actually visited us here in Arizona. I just feel like after somebody reads my book, they were actually on board with us, right? And how can I not like them? How can they not like us? So we still have some friends. There's one friend that showed us all around New York City, and still, followed us all through the loop. It's just wonderful. I just love being able to connect to people I would not otherwise have contact with through my writing. I love that. I wish I wrote better. I wish I was like fabulous, supercalifragilistic, and then I would even know more people.
I don't know. I reckon you're doing pretty good for yourself. I wouldn't put yourself down that far. I think you're doing very well for yourself. On the topics of books, I think it was your second book. Is that right? Crossing Pirate Waters.
Correct.
It is on well, it actually is. We've only just moved house, so I'll be honest, it's actually in an unpacked box at the moment, but it's on my box of books to start jumping into. Talk to me about pirates. So I've got all sorts of questions, some of which I know the answer to, some of which I have no answer to. But the first question is there really still pirates out there? And do they fly the skull and crossbones?
Oh, I don't know about the skull and crossbones. I think they pretty much try to stay under the radar. But yes, there are people out there who board other people's boats in order to take their boat, take their money, take their life. I'm sure we got boarded. Our boat was boarded in the Great Loop. Yeah, so it happens.
Hang on. Your boat was boarded in the Great Loop, but that's all in the United States, right?
Yeah. Well, it was one of those situations where you don't know what their intent was, but it was the middle of the night, and you were asleep. We were in a marina, asleep on our beds, and somebody boarded our boat, and they're fooling around upstairs on the bridge, and we hear all this noise, and are they trying to, and we hadn't even locked the door of because that's not how we think. And we were able to scare them away. I actually screamed, like, get off our boat, and I woke Glenn up, scared him with my screaming. And, the guy ran, and actually he was captured on video. But I'm just saying that I'm not trying to say that that's anything typical for the Great Loop or even in America. But I'm just saying bad stuff can happen everywhere, but you don't program for that. And obviously when we set off from Thailand, and in the Crossing Pirate Waters, you'll read how, I almost feel like I was Forrest Gump in a way. It's like we were always in these places, like we were in Phuket during the tsunami. It's like, what? Yes, and you'll read about that in Crossing Pirate Waters. But when we left Phuket, we really were confident that we wouldn't have much problems, because the tsunami had wiped out a lot of the pirates. It hit 14 countries in the Indian Ocean. We couldn't go to India because Cochin, the harbor. We couldn't go to Sri Lanka because Galle was closed. And, all these people had been killed by the tsunami. It's horrible to say, but, the pirates were reckoned to have been some of those people, right? And so we felt a lot more confident about crossing the Indian Ocean. And anyway, you'll read all about Crossing Pirate Waters, and I don't want to take away from but if you do read, when you read Crossing Pirate Waters, please read Escape from the Ordinary first, because you'll need to do that for some of the background. You can read it separately, it's standalone, but I would hate for you to do that. And by the way, right now, Escape from the Ordinary is a Prime read on Amazon. So if you're a Prime member of Amazon, you can read it for free. Amazon pays us, and you can download it for free.
Awesome, folks. I'm going to put the links for your books, by the way, the Amazon links and your website. I'll put that in the description of below so that people can go find it. And it's a no-brainer. If you're on Amazon Prime, go read it for nothing. I mean, that's and
ask your library to carry it. I'm not trying to make a lot of money from it. I just want to, I just want people to share our adventure. And I hope, I don't have children. I don't really feel like I've, contributed that much to the world. But I do want to, if I can inspire people to just take a risk, to lean a little bit further forward than they might ordinarily do. That would be, I would be really happy about that. If reading that, and some of my readers write me, and I've actually been in touch with people who are now out on the ocean because they read my book, who didn't even know how to sail. So I'm not saying, I know that this happens with all kinds of people who write books, and I'm not saying I'm special or my books are that special, but I just really, it would make me happy if it just inspired, some people to do a little more than they might ordinarily think of, because it does enrich your life so very much, as you know, because you have a whole podcast about people getting outdoors and leaning far forward.
That's it. I actually interviewed a ex-military officer earlier this week, and he cycled across America once because he didn't quite know what to do in the transition time. So he's like, well, I like cycling and I like exercise and I'm good at it. So he cycled across America. And when he got to the Atlantic Ocean and put his tire in the water, there was no fanfare, no drums beating. It was kind of a celebration, but an anticlimax. So he's like, oh, I think I'll go and do it again. And I think that I think a lot of people in the world need people to show them the way. They need somebody to take that barrier or that boundary, maybe that they keep running up against, the glass ceiling, just go and lift it a few notches higher for them to show that it is possible to do more than that. And you don't have to be born with millions, have a PhD from Harvard, be Jeff Bezos or whatever else to make stuff happening. Actually, a solid military career, saving hard and having big goals, you can make this stuff happen for yourself. So the world needs people like you, Julie, to go and share your passion and what you've done to inspire everybody else. And I think that's almost your gift to us, I think.
Well, thank you.
So, I want to go back to pirates, though, because I've still got questions. And I didn't actually write any questions about pirates, but I live in South Africa. I'm very well aware the eastern and west coast of Africa now both have a fair, large degree of piracy happening. To educate me, where else in the world can you run into pirates? I mean, is it all over the world, or is there sort of pockets, hotspots or something?
Well, I've been surprised to read about a lot of scary things. I don't want to use the word scary, but surprising things happening even off Central America. That I think that there are some really challenging economic situations that, when we spent one hurricane season in Venezuela, and of course that's South America, but that was pretty it was getting lawless when we were there, and we left early because of some things that happened, to other people, other sailors. Like, we would be on VHF radio, and we were in a nice marina, but anybody who was at an anchor, just about everybody that we knew that was at anchor had been boarded. Like, people climb in through their hatches in the middle of the night and, hold a knife to them and take their, we don't know anybody that was, physically harmed, but they were, other than being hit over the head, there was that. But yeah, I mean, it's just to always be glancing over your shoulder. It's not great. But I guess, I don't know what the answer is. Would I recommend for someone to sail around the world right now? I think that cruisers are finding solutions. They're banding together and forming these caravans. I think that when we went through, it was the coalition forces, but now the Coast Guard, you can find the U.S. Coast Guard off of the coast of Somalia now, believe it or not. And I know the legal reason why, and I don't want to take us down that rabbit hole, but it's kind of astounding really where we have seen US Coast Guard around the world. Because I think of Coast Guard, like off the coast of America, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're everywhere. And we had friends who were, basically saved from pirates by the French. And, I'm just saying that everybody realizes it's a problem and they're finding solutions so that people can live their dream. And, we know people who now they have, cruising convoys or rallies, I guess they call them, that leave from Darwin to do Indonesia, the South China Sea. That's not a real savory place either these days. I have no idea what happens off the coast of the Philippines because that's really off of the circumnavigation route. But I know some people do it. I wish they'd write a book. I'd like to hear about it.
It's funny because
So
I was just going to say my personal general experience in wandering around the world, some of the nicest people in the world I've ever met has been in Pakistan. And yet some of the most hospitable, generous, it's arguably Pakistan's one of the safest countries I've ever spent time in. And yet that's not what the news would tell you. And it's weird because you meet all of these incredible, beautiful people who are hospitable and generous. And I wonder whether it sort of lowers your guard a bit. And then it comes as a shock when somebody isn't of that, the 0.00001% person who isn't of that generous, loving, caring, hospitable nature. It comes as a big shock. But certainly, if I was to sail around the world, before we hit record, I said I'd have to get very brave to sail around the southern tip of Africa. Based upon I've got some friends who work as contractors just south of the Suez Canal on big ships, guarding big ships going through there. And some of the stuff they tell me, I think I'd be brave and go around the southern tip of Africa.
Well, send me an email after you read about our passage through the Suez Canal. Send me an email and tell me what you think about that. I mean, exactly. But isn't this why we do this adventurous stuff? Because it's good for our brains to figure out how to deal with, different situations. And yes, we do want to keep the part of our brains that is innocent and open and heart open to the world. We want to keep having what I can only call those heart open experiences where people don't see us as Americans or privileged Westerners, but just see us as other people, and we would we always dragged a hand line. And whenever we, we would really try hard to catch a big fish so that we could arrive in a native village and give them a tuna, so that they would see that we're just like them. It's all about food, right? We all need to eat. We're all basically the same. We want to make friends. Glenn wants to go spearfishing with the guys from their village. I want to sit down and try to communicate with the women of the village. We're just all the same. You strip away the internet, you strip away electricity, and we're just all the same. It's a big leveler. Cruising around the world, being out in the back of beyond, like you are, go out to Africa, native villages, go on a wildlife viewing safari. Your life is going to be stripped away to what it was, a long time ago. And there's going to be a quality to it that you cherish.
That's it. And, South Africa is one of the most dangerous countries on planet Earth at the moment. If you value, it's not the safest place to be. It makes Mexico City actually is safer. Just as it for people in North America who know about Mexico, Mexico City is safer than most parts of South Africa. So, and yet the thing I think that this adventuring does, whether it's sailing around the world, doing a huge hike, I don't know, it doesn't really matter what it is it almost develops us as very flexible human beings who aren't stuck. We're not stuck in fear, or we're not stuck in abundance. We actually can do both, and we can transition, and we can be open-hearted when the time is right, and yet we also can solve problems and manage the risks, whether that's a risk of pirates or sinking or lost or hypothermia or whatever it may well be. And you know, I'm heavily into psychology and cybernetics, and the first law of cybernetics is something around, you know, the art of success is the person who will be most successful has the largest range of flexible behavior. And I think this is what adventuring and sailing and all these other things brings to us, is it forces us to open our minds to many things, and also it forces us to transition from hope to fear, to managing the fear, to back to hope again, maybe all within one short window of time. And I don't know about you, but when you think about the people you know in the places you live, most people get very stuck in a negative mindset or a unrealistically abundant mindset, and they get stuck. And I think adventuring buys us that opportunity to be flexible backwards and forwards.
Yeah, I think that whatever part of your brain is responsible for fear, and whatever part of your brain is responsible for that happy-go-lucky adventure seeking, it's like, you know, the synapses get, I don't know, you get to experience both. So you're not only in your fear part, you're not only your adventure part, you're sort of like you're merged. I don't know. I think that those synapses, it's going to be better for your brain in the long run, because, you know, you realize that, you know, when you're fearful, you know to let the fear pass and just think about that part of your brain that is like, okay, you know, this is what's really going to be there. It's not going to be that worst case, half glass full scenario. What's really going to be there is that part that the adventurous, happy-go-lucky part of your brain conjures. And that's what you have to think about. Of course, like if you're falling off a wave, you really can't think about that at the time. I'm just saying that, I mean, I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish to some ridiculous degree. I mean, you know, reality, there are physical realities. And like I say, just follow the Admiralty cruising guide. You know, the British, you guys were there first. You wrote it all down for us all to follow, and just cross the oceans, be where you're supposed to be at the right time of the year, the right latitude, and everything will be okay.
I concur. Now, we're coming towards the end of our time together, but I'm very curious. You obviously did your transition from military to sailing around the world. How was the transition when you decided that we're now going to buy a house and we're not going to be sailing around the world anymore? How did you manage that second transition?
Oh, that was so hard. That was really, 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 really difficult. What you'll read about in the book is that my husband had some medical problems that pretty much dictated that we needed to live in this part of the country. And initially, and then inertia is like a really big force. And then we said, well, at least we're close to the Sea of Cortez. We always thought we would always live on the water. But you know, that's just it. You just never know what life has out there for you. And as long as you keep that kind of like resilient problem solving, you know, let's make lemonade out of lemons, optimizing every situation that you possibly can, you're going to just find that wonderful things are going to come to you. And, you know, since we've been living up here, we love to go, wake up super early when it's dark and go take our binoculars and watch the elk rutting or locking horns, or, you know, go fishing, you know, catch and release these trout up in the streams, or go for a hike. Or there's so many great things that our life would have been much less dimensional if we had just always stayed on the water. Now, here we are, you know, we've got a log cabin, and life offers unexpected wonders. You know, if you just don't fight what's happening, just kind of go with it. It's like, okay, I can make something happen if I work really hard. I know how to do that. I found out in the Army. But what I really found is that if something is just like not supposed to be, you know, just check it out and see if it offers you something, and then, and then you can always force something to happen at any time that you want, but just kind of go with it and see what the universe has in mind for you. That's
It's interesting.
that's
I
good.
had a mentor a long time ago talk to me about one of those 12-inch rulers, plastic rulers that we had when we were at school. And he said, if you want to get the ends of the rulers to meet, to join together, where do you focus your time and effort and attention? And most people will grab hold of both ends and then try and bring both ends together. And he said, have you ever considered just heating up the middle and allowing the ends of the ruler to join themselves together? And I was too young and naive at that point in time to go and absorb that message and do anything useful with it. But I kind of live my life by that now. And what you're saying is so right. If you just focus on that heating up the middle and let the rest of it do its own thing, I guess going with the flow a bit. Opportunities are so abundant out there, and they just present themselves when you're ready for it.
Yeah. Also, I also say that, many people on your podcast are, really young adventurers, but, we're aging. And as we age, we have to be careful that, that we don't, we need to keep the neuroplasticity in our brains. We need to have as much input and different experiences as we possibly can. And, that includes, doing the prep. You need to have I am a person who is happiness when I am working towards a goal in pursuit of something. And, and I think that most people are like that. We're all happier when we have something to work forward, towards. And, when you said earlier, what is your next big thing? Well, I don't know. We're gonna, in a little while, we're gonna head down to San Carlos, Mexico, and do our sailing. I'm in the middle of, I'm actually more than middle. I'm almost finished writing a book about something that's totally different. It's probably, I don't know how long it's going to be before it goes out. I don't even know if there'll be much demand for it, but it's kind of a combination book of stories and VHF guide. There were so many people in the Great Loop who, one day and on Lake Erie, we heard 3 May days just on one day. And people are all, anyway, I'm not here trying to flog my new book, but anyway, the name of the book is Mayday, Mayday. And it's a Mariner's VHF guide. And it has a lot of stories about different Mayday experiences around the world that we heard or that we were told by other people. And then an actual guide on how to use the digital functions and everyday hailing, how to run a cruiser's net, things like that. And I have a whole bunch of articles I wrote. We were in the Great Loop. So I want to write a book about that, more of a dispatches thing, because it was such a different, it was eye-opening. It really, really made me appreciate so much of the history of America, like the Erie Canal. They started building that in 1825, and there's so much history in these little towns. So Rob, if there's any way that you can get on that boat that you mentioned that your friend is doing part of the Great Loop in a trimaran, get on board, and if you want some recommendations on what I consider to, the real nuggets of the Great Loop, let's be in contact. And I could, because, there's some great things to see in the Great Loop, and I'll be writing a book about that before too long. And that's what I'll do in the afternoons in San Carlos. That'll be my next 2 pursuits.
That sounds incredible. So, Julie, if people want to find you, social media stalk you, buy your books, where's the best place for them to run into to find you?
Well, juliebradleyauthor.com, and you can email me through there, or there may be a link on there to buy my books, but just go get the first one for free right now through Amazon. It's like a pretty good deal. And then, hopefully that you'll be prompted to get the second one. And we're doing really well in other countries too. England, UK, Canada. Let me think, where else? Oh, Germany. I guess we're all over the EU. And I don't know. I thought about translating into Spanish, but I think it's too hard for me. My Spanish, I take Spanish lessons and I really work hard, but all the nuances, I don't know. I think that that probably won't happen.
It's very hard. Somebody's been trying to convince me recently to turn all the blogs I write into Spanish, and my Spanish is terrible. And so we got a translator to do one, and then I got a Spanish person to read it and start recounting it back. And the meaning was subtly lost in the translation process, or certainly the human aspect of who I am as the writer was subtly lost. And it didn't feel right. So I've parked it for the time being, but we'll see. Julia, I just want to say thank you for your time, but more importantly, I want to say thank you so much for giving people the opportunity to step onto your boat with you and have an adventure and be inspired that they can do their adventure as well. Without people like you out there and your husband as well, showing us that, whatever you set your heart and mind on truly is possible, and that a 3-year adventure may well not be 3 years. It might well be substantially longer. I just think the world needs leaders at this point in time, and you may not want to be, but sadly you probably are to a whole bunch of people who've read your books. So thank you so much for that. And when I unpack this box, I'm going to jump straight into, I'll take your advice, escape from the ordinary. I'll jump in and get busy and look forward to having my own, being inspired myself from reading it.
Thanks, Rob. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much.